Okay, so I think we'll just start off. As people come in, we'll keep going and they can join us. Because of time, I don't want us to take too long. So I'd like to welcome everyone again to the first UN75 dialogue. We're really excited as Simon to host this space and to have all of you join us in a very special way the panelists will be having today. Just to give a bit of a brief about what the UN75 is all about and to probably help you understand better why this space is really important. This year, the UN will be turning 75 years old. That's only 25 years to turn 100. And that's a pretty big celebration, yeah? So in a way to commemorate their birthday or the existence for 75 years, the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, wanted to do something a little different. And instead of maybe a whole celebration and hearing from the usual government officials that they're always listening to, he decided to host a global listening tour, which is what the UN75 dialogue is all about. It is a global listening tour. This is a space whereby individuals will come. So the main thing is that the UN doesn't want to hear only from the government officials, although they might have, the resources to get as much information, but they really want to hear from the grassroots, from the people on the ground. And with our amazing panel today, we'll be able to hear from the different sectors that they're all experts in, as well as to really understand what it is that we need to do. Because the next 25 years are going to be crucial. It's going to be what will, mark, at least for the United Nations, how effective it can be and what kind of impact it can really have. And in a smart move, they want to do it, the best way they possibly can by getting ideas, understanding what the real challenges are, and dealing with that particularly. So this space is just to share what we think needs to be done, what roles the United Nations needs to play, and even as a society, as young people, what it is we need to do so that we're able to have a better world in the next 25 years. So I'd just like to play a very short video, 5-minute video, just to give you a better understanding of it, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Thank you. Okay, 1 second.
What if there was, there's plenty of what ifs.
What if we didn't have corruption?
Persecuciones o guerras.
HIV.
AIDS.
Discrimination.
Stigma.
ماذا لو فهم الجميع في العالم معنى أن تكون مهاجراً بعيداً عن أهلك، بعيداً عن ناسك، بعيداً عن وطنك.
I always think, what if my home just disappears? What if my whole country disappears? And what if my daughter never gets to see it?
What if the world was cleaner?
What if my child could grow up in a world where climate change wasn't a constant threat and where cities were pollution-free?
أمنيتي لها خاصة بعدل الفرق بين المدينة وبرات المدينة.
Tous les jours, on voit les villes grandir, on voit un exode rural des populations, et cela vient avec beaucoup de problèmes, des problèmes de logement, des problèmes d'insalubrité, des problèmes de santé publique.
By 2050, globally, there will be more people over the age of 60 than children.
So we need to plan for age-friendly cities.
Но это единственным образом можно решить. Один шаг за шагом. There's so many people that have nothing, and there's so few people that have a lot. And you think about inequality. So important to understand that we need a world that is more equal.
What if we lived in a world where all that mattered was how we cared about each other?
We're all deserving of the same kind of care and love and health and education. And these are just all basic necessities that we should all have access to.
世界上的贫富差距应该可以减少，而且将会有更多的工作机会给新的一代。
New technology can do things that are completely undreamt of. What if it was used for bringing education to rural areas?
Tout ce que je suis devenu, c'est vraiment cette éducation que j'ai reçue à la base. Et je pense que si moi je peux accéder à cette éducation, tous les enfants du monde doivent avoir accès à ça aussi.
如果全世界一起合作，打造一个共享的网络空间，那么所有人都能够参与数字经济。
¿Qué tal si en el mundo nos escucháramos?
When we bring our minds together, those ideas become innovation.
I think my only what if, out of many what ifs, would be what if every young person was empowered to reach their full potential?
What if the world was a more secure place for young people like me?
Мы все в этом мире временные. Y у нас есть путь выбрать.
Cuando digo que hace falta solidaridad entre países, también es solidaridad entre las personas.
What if all the nations understand that we are so powerful? We should be the instrument of peace. We should be the peace.
What if leaders and communities would understand that they should use dialogue and not conflict to address their differences?
Si c'est possible.
Do I think this is possible? Yes, because I'm an optimist.
I'm an optimist.
We need your opinions, your strategies, your ideas for us to be able to deliver better for the people of the world that we must serve.
We can change this game.
It is absolutely essential that you all join the conversation.
Everybody has to contribute. We don't have an option.
Everybody needs to talk. We need to come together.
What would the world be like?
So that was sorry. So that was just to give you an idea of what it is the UN75 is all about. So I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. These are really young individuals who are from our very country, right here at home. And it's really a big honor and a privilege that even in our country, with all the different things that are happening, we're able to find individuals who are exceptional and who will definitely carry this country forward in a really, really big way. So I'm going to start off with Mr. Nimrod Kimani. So Nimrod is a human resource consultant and a career strategist with experience working in and with SMEs and startup organizations in the HR and management consulting space. He is driven by his love for building and maintaining relationships. He takes pride in providing the best experiences possible, that's both professionally and socially. His areas of expertise include recruitment and hiring, employee engagement, people development, and people analytics, just to mention a few. He is very passionate about professional branding, career change, inspiring and supporting young professionals succeed in the workspace. That's through coaching and mentorship. And when he's not keeping busy with work, you'll find him reading a personal development book over coffee or attending a relevant webinar such as this or online engagement. So welcome so much, Nimrod. It's great to have you with us. Next is Ms. Cynthia Nyongesa. So Ms. Cynthia is a young individual who is a founder of a digital forum called Cynthia Untamed. If you haven't checked it out, please do. Cynthia Untamed, which amplifies the stories of young Africans who advocate, influence, mobilize, and entrepreneurs within the communities. Very recently, she featured a story of a girl who was running a business club in her school. Consequently, her teachers discovered her and her leadership ability and selected her as one of the prefects. Further, she used the story in her application to the African Leadership Academy in South Africa, where she was selected to pursue her entrepreneurial potential. She believes in giving a voice to the untold stories of African youth, which very unfortunately are many. So that's a really good thing to do. Her blog receives readership of nearly 4,000 unique visitors in a month. She has also reached out to about 3,000 young people through multiple physical forums or platforms such as schools, where she speaks to young people about life, career, academics, and volunteering. Currently, she's worked at UNICEF Kenya as a youth advocate for 2 years. And through this, she's led the communication, advocacy, and partnership team to reach out to children, youth in Kenya to advocate for their rights through UNICEF's digital platform and workshop. Other roles involve preparing children for public speaking and media opportunities. In addition, she is the Generation Unlimited Youth Ambassador for Kenya, where she advises the Global Secretariat on its governance, advocacy, structure on youth, and has a vital role in coordinating the Generation Unlimited Youth Challenge in Kenya. She also holds a degree in law from the University of Nairobi. She is articulate, very articulate in voicing her issues about young people centered around education, engagement, and employment, and has represented Kenya in global youth events such as the UNICEF Generation 2030 Workshop for the Future of African Children in South Africa, the 3rd Pan-African Youth Conference in Ethiopia, and the World Bank Youth Summit in the United States of America. She's also moderated high-level panels, including one between young people in Kenya and UNICEF's Executive Director. Welcome so much, Cynthia. It's great to have you with us. Next, we have Abigael Kima. She is a passionate environmentalist who is focused on making positive change towards creating a sustainable world for all. Abigail completed her degree in environmental science, she awaits her graduation in December 2020. Congratulations. She is the Africa Youth Lead for Marine Arctic Peace Sanctuary, also known as MAPS, under the Parvati Foundation, which is a campaign that advocates for the protection of the Arctic sea ice. She coordinates the MAPS chapter in Africa. She loves social justice and has led Kenyatta University, where her passion for climate justice began. She joined one of the environmental clubs on campus, where she developed her climate leadership skills, and in no time was appointed the chairperson solely because of her commitment and dedication. Through her exemplary leadership, she has been awarded the Erasmus Credit Mobility Scholarship to Hungary to pursue environmental engineering. And she joined her fellow climate activist, Elizabeth Wabuti, as she started off her organization, Green Generation Initiative, that's GGI. That was in 2016. She is a key environmental educator, and her passion for teaching and imparting knowledge to the children is evident. Through GGI, she has reached out to 20,000 children from various schools and planted over 30,000 tree seedlings. She is passionate about youth mentorship, thus she uses the opportunity to educate high school students in important life skills by telling them simply telling them her story. She was nominated for the Eco Hero Award because of her glowing remarks from other members and supporters across the globe, alongside a successful hosting of collaborative events supporting MAPS. The EHA Selection Committee ratified and confirmed her nomination as the first female EHA winner in history for the month of February 2019. She is very enthusiastic and committed and has inspired many Kenyans and members of the Team 54 project international across the globe. Apart from her environmental conservation, Abigail is passionate about music, dance, and she's also co-founded a Christian-based band called Jubal Band, who have played a huge role in transforming the love of youth in her hometown, Iten. And the youth around them learn that it's possible to balance passion, talent, and professional work towards positive change. Welcome, Abigail. Next, we have Bryan Chesoli. So Bryan is an accomplished individual, and he's very passionate about championing for safe spaces for children and youth across the sub-Saharan Africa, and to find their power to lead while young. Bryan has extensive knowledge in education and youth programs, having held various leadership roles throughout his career. He also has knowledge in transformational leadership and is committed to making positive change and value addition using the knowledge and skills gained from his professional and academic work. He's also currently responsible for leading and developing strategies for Ashoka East Africa, that in their efforts in championing young change makers in partnership with local and regional partners. He has a 5-year vision for Ashoka is to inspire 1 million youth, that's between the age of 12 to 35 years, to identify themselves as change makers within the region. So welcome, Bryan. It's great to have you with us. So I'm going to introduce the last speaker. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here at this time, but he'll be joining us in just a few minutes. So the last speaker we'll have today is Mr. Simon Kioko. So Simon's life mission is to be a positive change agent through engaging, developing, and connecting people from all walks of life. He has been very fortunate to live a true leadership experience. He was a former president of ISEC in Kenya and a current co-founder and president of a nonprofit organization called UN75. Simon has received several awards, including Associate Fellowship of the Royal Commonwealth Society, that's the RCS, and recently the United Nations Global School Ambassador of Sustainable Development Solutions Network Youth Initiative. He's an immediate former ALX Launchpad lead with the African Leadership Group. He pursued a Bachelor in Commerce at the University of Nairobi, and he's a certified public accountant with Strathmore University, and now he's an associate of the member of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya. Currently, he's pursuing a master's in business administration with the African Leadership University of Business and a master's in public policy and management at Strathmore University. He's very passionate about leadership and community development and the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations, particularly SDG 4, 8, and 17. He's a firm believer in service leadership, and that leadership is about character, integrity, and positive influence. The world is counting on you and I guess hence his title for his organization. He is a youth education and leadership expert and constantly engages in youth events, forums, conferences, summits as a speaker, chair, moderator, or facilitator. He's also a coach, a mentor, and a role model to other young leaders, and currently authoring a book on youth development called Youth on a Mission. He loves children, good food, traveling, board games, making new connections, networks, and meeting new friends. So that will be our panel for today. I'm really excited. As you've heard, the qualifications of every individual on this panel is beyond, what we, what one might, expect of someone our age. So just to kick off our discussion, I'd like us to, those who are attending, to just answer this simple poll question. And it will pretty much let us know the way forward. So I'm going to allow the panelists to answer this question as well. So in the next 25 years, do you think the world will be better? Do you think it will be worse? Or do you think it will be the same? So kindly do let us know what your thoughts are, and then panelists can also answer the question, and then we can take it up from there. So that it has been put up, kindly pick your votes. Yes, hopefully. Okay, I need to answer it as well. Okay. Great. So I'm going to end the poll in just a minute, but everyone has answered it. Oh, very interesting. Okay. So I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So as you can see on the results, 54% of us feel the world will be better. That's me included. I think the world will be better. 33 believe the world will be worse, and 13 think the world will be the same. So I'd like to start off with Bryan. Maybe let us know what your response was and why you feel that was your response.
Well, hi, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, good. My response to the question was better. I'm a bit of an optimist, so I want to believe that we are, learning from our mistakes. But more importantly, when we look at the population, say, for example, of Africa, or even all the developing countries, or the developing world, you realize that young people are the center of that. Our population is a good percentage of that, right? And so, what, as in to support my assumption or my thinking of the world being better, is I want to believe that young people will be able to muster the courage to really take on that leadership, find that power, the power within themselves to take on that leadership role. And for me, leadership is not about a position. It's not about, a role, as I said, sorry. It's about, giving yourself that permission to start, to see what's happening within your environment and come up with a solution to it, or come up with a better way of doing it. And if we, young people, begin to do that, then we are indeed going to have a better world. It's not the responsibility of the government by itself, not the responsibility of the private sector by itself, but of the individuals. And we, the young people, make a good percentage of that. So that is why I am saying better.
Okay, nice. Abigail, what was your answer and why was that your answer?
Can you hear me? Okay, so my answer was the world would be worse. Well, speaking from an environmentalist point of view, I feel like we have a problem with implementation. We are coming up with a lot of policies on environment, climate change, but when it comes to implementation, it takes a really long time, and commitment from our leaders is not very evident. Currently, we're in the middle of a climate emergency, but I feel like it's not getting the attention that it should. A few months ago, we didn't know we would be in the middle of a pandemic and everything would stop because of it. And the pandemic has gotten so much attention, and we are not realizing that we have a bigger problem, which is the climate emergency. We are experiencing wildfires, the melting of the ice caps, the change in weather patterns, which is causing food insecurity, and possibility of more dangerous viruses that would affect the world once the ice melts and the permafrost is exposed, which could expose us to more dangerous viruses. And also the conference of parties that have been held for all these years. This year we were supposed to have the COP26, but it won't happen thanks to COVID. And we have the COP25, which was not a success because the leaders and the delegates didn't come to a consensus. And so I feel like we really need to do more, and which led the youth led by Greta Thunberg to walk the streets of Spain in protest. So I feel like we are trying, but there's a problem when it comes to implementation, especially when it comes to matters climate change, and which affects the world that we live in. So if you're not careful, if you're not taking care of our home, then it means all these things that we're building up to will be all for nothing. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Nimrod, what's your take on this?
So my answer was better.
Okay.
And for me, I will speak from a point of, the workplace. And right now, I know all of us know that we are at the advent of the fourth industrial revolution. And I believe that, based on the history that we did in school, we started off from the steam engines to assembly lines to computing technology. And right now, this is where we are at 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. And the conversation right now that is happening with every individual, with every corporate organization is, revolves around AI, revolves around cloud computing, IoT, marketing, augmented reality, and so on. And I'd say that so much has changed. And if not, it is en route to change. And, the workplace as we knew it 5 to 10 years ago is not the same as now. And, we are testimonies, and we have seen testimonies of companies that have been run out of business just because they did not take up technology. We have the example of Kodak. And technology is there to increase efficiency and effectiveness at the workplace. So for me, I'm thinking that, being the optimist that I am, I know that the world will be a better place, due to the accepted harmony between people and machines working together. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Cynthia, what's your take? Because you've dealt quite a bit. You've had different conversations about this, I'm sure. What was your view, and why was that your view?
Well, for me, I thought that the world will be the same, majorly speaking from from a communication and advocacy point of view. I've been to the field several times, and I amplify the stories of young change makers who are advocates in their communities. So for example, you find that there's a young person who's enabling children to stay in school or not to get into the justice system. But you see, there's this young person who's trying to mitigate the dangers of children getting into the justice system, for example. But still, there are so many children getting into the justice system at the same time due to various reasons, which include violence in the home, or maybe they're orphans, there's nobody to take care of them, and the parents or the guardians don't care. So you find that while people are trying to support children and young people, there's also the other side that is countering the whole narrative and the whole system. So it makes it difficult for young people's lives to improve. Also because I've had conversations with people who've been in this field, people we look up to in government or in the diplomat arena, and they tell you that when they were our age, they were having these conversations about young people, about changing the communities, ensuring young people are represented. And then now you are now young enough to be their child, and you're still having the same conversation. So I keep asking myself, if they were having these conversations, why am I also doing the same thing? Shouldn't we be talking about something else? I think I find that to be quite of a challenge. The other thing that why I feel that the world will be the same is majorly because generations are different. Generations are exposed to different opportunities. Nimrod has just talked about the agrarian revolution, industrial revolution, and all that. So the people who lived at that time were experiencing something different from what we are experiencing. Young people like us, like Abigail, we're not talking about environmental conservation. People are not having these conversations. So you find, in as much as life is improving, there's still something that is bringing us down. And also, lastly, is the rate of corruption, which is extremely, it sickens me. Sometimes I don't even want to watch the news because I know the first headline I will see is 1, corruption, 2, COVID, 3, some people fighting out there. So then I keep asking myself, really, are we moving or are we just balancing the skills?
Okay. And just
muted.
In the middle of good and bad, or is it leaning more towards good and bad? When you say we're the same, where would you put it? Is it good to be the same? Is it a bad thing to be the same? Just in your view, generally, if you have an answer.
Well, let me say that probably I'm leaning more on the good side, majorly because I still believe that our young people are really determined to make a change, but there's something that pulls their efforts behind. And if we are not careful, our children will be coming home and telling us the same thing. Oh, you know, I was talking about environmental conservation. I was talking about youth representation. We're still struggling with gender equality bills in this country. So yeah.
Okay. So Simon, welcome. We were just answering the question on, in the next 25 years, by the time the UN is 100 years old, in your view, do you think the world will be better, worse, or it will remain the same? You can just share your thoughts with us and why you pick whatever you pick.
Hi everyone. Sorry I came up in a bit late. I was finishing up another meeting, but I'm happy to be here and see you all. So I would say I'm more of a hopeful person, so more optimistic. So I tend to believe that it will be better because we tend to improve every time, whether it's even in mistakes, because even when we do the wrong things, it's a lesson in itself, and it's up for the next generation to learn from those mistakes. So I'm hopeful because now in those 25 years, we do a number of mistakes in the first maybe 5 years, then the next generation after that 5 years will be able to hopefully not repeat that mistake. So that's the whole concept of why we, especially hearing from you guys in terms of why it's important to work with the young people, because those are the people who can now make it better at that time. Hopefully we'll still be 25 years from now, as I can see the panelists' faces, I believe we'll all be in our senior leadership roles, maybe CEOs, hopefully a president among us and all that. So I think then we'll be able to influence that change. So I'll confidently say that we'll be in a better place just because we're intentional about shaping the next generation of leaders. Speaking from myself in terms of what I do, but also reading the profiles of the other panelists, I'm happy that we have young people working for the young people to make them better. So yeah, that's my short. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. So actually, I agree quite a bit with you, Simon. I think even hosting such a space is testament of the kind of individuals we'll be having in the future. I think all of you have very, wow, you're very practical. It's quite, very, very encouraging. So I'd like to move on to the next question or the next point of discussion. So we all have our different ideas on what we feel the world needs, where we feel we stand and where we feel we're going. In your view, I'd like to start with you, Nimrod, because work is something that even at the moment, maybe because of COVID, it's a discussion that has been going on quite a bit. In your view, and not specifically in work, but in general also, what changes do you think need to be made, as a society, maybe here, both here in Kenya, internationally, or what changes do you feel we need to start making so that we can reach this ideal or this desired world we want to have in the next 25 years. So Nimrod, you can start us off.
Sure. Thanks, Daniela. So for me, I think one of the changes, or rather the process of change, will first need to start with acceptance. And acceptance because, it's understanding that the times are changing and agreeing to, being part of the revolution. And then after change now comes the next step, or call it more of the adopting the change. And he is will need to learn about introspection. The other day I was having a conversation with my friend, and she was telling me that introspection is a skill that needs to be learned by many people. It's not something that comes easy to everyone, and it's something that people need to understand. And the good thing about introspection and self-reflection is you'll get to understand who you are as a person, get to understand what your passion is, get to understand and learn what do I need to reskill in to be skilled in, so that you can be part of the future that you want to see. And just to shed more light, even when it comes to upskilling and reskilling, you'll find that we are at a point whereby everything is changing. Companies are changing the way they're hiring. Companies are changing, their internal processes. And you'll find that, for example, right now, you'll find that most of the professionals out there are still doing their job applications in a very traditional way. And you'll find that companies have already changed from that. Companies are making use of applicant tracking systems. This is technology, this is AI, whereby after doing a certain, application for a certain role, probably a finance manager role, it's not a human being who will interact with your CV at first. It is a system. And if you do not get to their minimum threshold, then you are automatically drawn out of the process. So if you continue doing things the way we are used to, probably I can quote Mutahi Kagwe, if you continue treating the workplace or other, the same way we used to traditionally, it will treat us in a very bad way. Let me say that. And one of the things that one of the traditional ways could be, using one CV for all job applications. The other thing would be probably a single job application means, a job application means applying to 1,000 jobs, which does not necessarily give you the results that you need. So we are at a point whereby we need to adopt to the change, get to understand what is happening, what is trending, what is happening 5 years down the line in my industry, and now sort of start backtracking and saying, where can I, bring improvement? Where can I bring value, even as a young professional or a senior professional in the industry? Yeah, thank you.
Great. Bryan, what's your thought? What do you feel we need to change as a society, if there's anything we need to change, in Kenya, internationally? What do you feel needs to change?
First of all, I just have to appreciate the views that all have just shared in the first go. It's interesting just to get the perspective of everyone, right? But one thing that I really like that Cynthia said is the use of the term change maker, and I hope that everyone in this call identifies the change maker. And borrowing from what Nimrod has also said, we are going through this change, right? We're experiencing exponential change, and in this world that we're living in today, you see that there's need for certain skills that people are now seeing are key in comparison to others. So I once listened to Jack Ma during the economic forum. I can't remember the full name, and he talks about the soft skills, right? And in today's world, it's important for everyone to identify as a change maker, and being a change maker is having these soft skills. So we're talking about empathy, and Nimrod has talked about introspection. We're talking about new leadership. We're talking about ethical leadership, right? Because right now we are complaining about corruption, and it's on us. And again, I repeat, we as the individuals, we as the people, we as young people need to begin to see that this system that we're living in is a bit rotten, right? Or there's some elements of this system that is rotten. So there is opportunity for us now to reimagine what it should look like and begin to say, let's nurture this type of leadership, ethical leadership being one of the key things. And then we're talking about teamwork, right? And teamwork is essentially being able to collaborate with other people, being able to understand that in this new world that we're heading to, in a world where AI and technology is taking over, people skills is very important. Having people skills is very important. Being able to work with, Nimrod, Simon, Abigail, and Cynthia, and yourself is very important. Being able to appreciate the strengths that everyone brings to the table, because indeed everyone is powerful and everyone should identify, as a leader. So let us appreciate that in this future. And I believe if we begin to see ourselves, and again, I'm also like Simon, I'm optimistic. Yes, Abigail, I agree with you that we with the current pandemic, there's too much focus on the pandemic, and we're not opening our eyes to the other things that are happening. But again, at the same time, what I'm beginning to see is that what yourself you're doing with Batuti, what Cynthia is talking about of a young person in a classroom where they're thinking about, okay, so there's this gap and I need to empower someone else to be able to become powerful, right? And that is the key thing that we're beginning to see. And so the question then becomes, how do we create an environment, we, the young people, how do we create an environment that we begin to master skills that are core to the future of work, or that are core to for a better tomorrow? So that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, very interesting. So you talked about ethical leadership. I don't know if you could expand a bit on that. Like, how would you suggest we go about developing ethical leadership? If you were to come up with a career, just ideas, basically, just especially that ethical leadership.
Wow, can we open that to the panelists, and then I bounce back from the ideas?
Does anyone have?
I want to hear what they have to say, and then maybe share my thoughts on the same.
Okay, anyone have anything to add? The concept of ethical leadership. How would we go about developing ethical leadership? Would it be how we were raised? Would it be something that's in the education system? Just any thoughts? Because I think it's a pretty important idea. Is it something we can even be trained to do? Or is it something you just have to have? Any thoughts on that?
All right. Yeah. Yes. So I've had the honor of working with the African Leadership University. So some of you could be familiar with it. The same people responsible for the ALA in South Africa, the African Leadership Academy. And then there's the Mauritian campus and Kigali campus of ALU. And then Nairobi opened a new chapter called ALX, which is a 6 months leadership program, essentially to develop ethical and entrepreneurial leaders. So definitely we're in the business of ethical leaders development. And as you can see, it starts all the way from the academy, which is now the Form 5 and 6, then the 3 years in university, and then now 6 months post-university. So you can already see that ethical leadership requires like a process. It's not a one-off. You can't say I went for an ethical class and I got an A. It requires, naturally, it requires a test of time, because that's what happens now. And what we try to do is plant the seed of that ethical leadership, where we expose them to ethical leaders. They read about Mandela. They're left to study on their own. They're left to even examine themselves during exams, for example, where you don't have, the way we have a situation where we have cameras and examiners trying to see whether we're cheating in exams. This is where now you're tested. Can you actually moderate yourselves? How can your peers manage you as well? Where it's your peers who are actually looking at you to make the right decisions. So it's exposing the young people to these spaces where they can interact with leaders, but also where they're tested to actually act ethically. So I think, to answer you, Daniela, I think it's possible to teach on ethical leadership, but it requires time, it requires a process, it requires a lot of hand holding, because you need to walk this journey with the people you are trying to teach this ethical leadership. And that's why I guess coaching and mentorship applies a lot. So I think one of the tools, or one of the things I do a lot with my time is mentoring and coaching. And sometimes we want to do it on our free time, where when a young person tells you, can you be my mentor? You want to check whether you have any capacity within your busy schedule. But I think it should be, for us, as what Bryan was saying, as change makers, we need to have it as our core business to mentor other people, because we have had the privilege of going before them. So what can you do to give back? How can you ensure that in the midst of all your busy schedule, mentoring and coaching the next generation of leaders is actually core of what you do on a day-to-day basis? Yeah.
Okay, so it has to be intentional. Can't be something we just leave like up in the air. Okay, Bryan, do you still want to add on to that?
Yes, I do. And I'll go back now to Ashoka stuff. What we believe is that you see even the term change maker is that it starts when you're young, right? And I'll give you an example about how we can begin to nurture some of these skills when people are really young, right? So say, for example, you are a parent, or you have a niece, you have a nephew, you have two of them, right? And one of them bullies the other within the house, right? What is your role there? Because that is an opportunity for you to nurture some sort of skill. Right now, where in the current society that we live in, the culture that we live in, you're going to get a few strokes and you're not going to be taught a lesson, right? But if you sit down with this young person, with this child, and ask them, why did you do it, right? How do you think your brother or sister felt about this? Do you think it was right to do this? How would you approach it differently? You see, such questions, you begin to engage them in a conversation where they begin to internalize their actions and see where the wrong is, right? And that is how we begin to now put those, small bits of ethics, the small bits of what is right and wrong, so that when that person grows up, they have a good understanding, they have that, what we call the ethical fiber. They know this is right and this is wrong, right? And then I like what Simon was saying. We should move from that aspect of, there has to be someone there to watch over you so that you don't do the wrong thing, right? It has to be something, and as you were saying, it has to be something internal and intentional, right? That that if I do this, irrespective of who's watching me, it's wrong or it's right? So I shouldn't do it. If we manage to begin to put this as part of our system, as young people, and that's why I'm really glad and lucky that I work with young people, and engage in conversations like this. We can begin to question some of these things and help people understand why it's important for us to have these skills at this particular time, to understand this is right and this is wrong.
Okay, great. Abigail, what do you think needs to change to make the society better, and not only here in Kenya, even internationally? What are some of the changes you feel we need to be making?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say change is inevitable. We know that, and it could be positive change or negative change. But I believe all of us are looking forward to a change that is progressive and is positive. So one thing I have learned when working with an international organization, the Poverty Foundation, our core value is learning the art of interconnection. Interconnection in the sense that one action in one part of the world causes a ripple effect on another, and that's evident especially when it comes to climate change and environmental conservation. So when we realize that we are interconnected and that the same things the things that affect others in one part of the world affects us too, then we realize that we have to take personal responsibility, and change starts with you. We've all been talking about ethical leadership and the importance of nurturing at a young age, and I feel like Bryan has mentioned a really important point, which is nurturing children at a young age, because it's very hard for me to go to someone who, let's say someone is driving and he's an older person and they throw trash through the window. It's hard for me to explain to them why that is wrong, but once a child once a child is taught that this is wrong, this action is wrong, then it's easier for them to grow up knowing that, yeah, this is how I should be, I should be responsible. So change starts with you. Another thing is taking responsibility for our actions in the field of climate change. We have this common thing that we always say, which is Africa accounts for about 3% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and so we are always looking at other nations to fulfill their commitments of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. But does that mean we have the ability and we have the right to make unsustainable investments? For example, about 2 years ago, the environmentalists were took to court a petition against the investment of coal in Lamu, and we're not even sure if it's going to take effect. And then I know there's also plans to establish a nuclear plant in Tana River. I don't know, in 2036. Those are very unsustainable investments. Another thing is, recently we were fighting for Uhuru Park. Wangari Maathai fought for the protection of Uhuru Park with everything that she had, but currently there's a highway that is supposed to cut across it. And yes, as young people we will shout. In fact, we had a gathering where we would just we were sensitizing the public on what the government wants to do, but what we lack is the fact that we don't have professionals or lawyers who would actually, lead us the right way. I'm sure there's a petition going on, but our government has a tendency of, we were told it would be rerouted, but I hear it's about to start. And so many other things. So it's about us taking responsibility for our actions. We don't need to wait for other people to come and solve our problems when we can actually just focus on positive change. Another thing is that as youth, we've not been given spaces at the king's table, or rather a seat at the king's table. Well, we are creating our own spaces. From what I have seen, honestly, youth are doing a lot, but what we are doing is not influencing change as it should, because we are not given spaces at the king's table. So we will try as much as possible to bring change in grassroots and within our communities, but we are not able to influence change at the top. Another thing is incorporating these things in the syllabus. For example, I know Italy has incorporated climate change in their syllabus, and we're talking about leadership, ethical leadership. Why can't we incorporate this in our syllabus? I know the current CBC has the environmental, I don't know what it's called, but kids are being taught on how to actually take care of the environment. So all these things that we feel can bring change as we nurture these kids, let us find ways of incorporating it in the syllabus, so that, in future we'll see positive change that is tangible. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
That's extensive. That's very, very, why you touched on a lot of very interesting topics. Cynthia, what do you think we need to change? And maybe you can touch a bit on the concept that Abigail has brought in about youth being at the king's table. But yeah, you can probably start off with what you think needs to change and then touch a bit on that as well. So Cynthia, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. Thanks, guys. So, Abigail has talked about how we young people are not at the king's table. And I had the same discussion when I was doing the yearly training here in East Africa. For those guys who are participating and you don't know about yearly, do check it out and see if you can join the program. So we were having a conversation about being change agents. After yearly, we're going to be these great people and all that. But you see, for me, I was doing yearly at a point where I've already been exposed to the reality. So I'm not doing yearly just to be trained to be a leader. I almost know what's going on. So I was asking the young people, yes, you want to be change agents. You're doing all these things. And I amplify these stories all the time. And I keep asking myself, okay, I've met this girl who's ensuring that children are not out of school. We have so many of us who are running initiatives, especially right now, to ensure that girls have access to sanitary towels. And then what? Fine, you're raising money, and then what? And I have done it before. I've raised money to do stuff. And then what? Are we just going to be the young people who are creating change but not influencing change? We're just creating it. We're just change makers. We're doing all these great things, but we're not able to influence the conversation at a higher level. And I think what came out of that discussion is that the only way is for we as young people to be in those spaces and ensure that we go to parliament and pass policies and ensure that there's a parliamentarian, Abigail, who's ensuring that there's a bill that is going to pass and say that there's a group of young people, Abigail and Elizabeth Watuti, and these are their efforts, and their efforts will be recognized in ABCDE type of way in whatever government is doing. Because at the end of the day, we may have all these organizations and all that, but it is government that decides what goes on at the end of the day. So I think that's really something for us to think about. We want to do these great things, but and then what? And then what? We'll just keep. Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. Something else is really the issue of policy. I was having a conversation with someone and I was asking her, oh wait, I feel like this course called Masters in Public Policy is becoming very popular. I don't know whether it's just me, but everyone, right, left, center is going to do a Masters in Public Policy. So yeah, these days are like, yeah, you know, we have a lot of policies, but we're not implementing them, which is true because I did quite a number of policies at my undergraduate level. And I was surprised to learn that we have education laws and policies. We have all these things with children and the law, but things are not happening on the ground. So my encouragement to anyone who wants to study policy, public affairs, all those courses, please don't just study the course, study it and then go and create change, some sort of change. Something else that I'd like to see change, and I don't know whether it's a failure on the communication level or I don't know what's happening, but you see the way we are 32 participants in this Zoom call, but
Yeah.
trust me, go out in the street and ask, what is UN75? What is Simon? What is the Africa Free Continental Trade Area Agreement? People will be like, what? So I keep wondering, yes, our leaders are gathering in Kigali and gathering wherever they gather, and they're launching all these things, but the person who's supposed to be impacted by whatever it is you're talking about, when we say Africa Free Continental Trade Area Agreement will create opportunities for young people, do young people even know what the trade agreement is? However, I think it is also your responsibility as a young person to find out what is this, which is good. It's actually a good thing that the young people are actually on this call, because that way they're able to learn. Something else I'd like to see change really is the access to jobs, because we're saying, oh, okay, you're a young person, you can't get a job, become an entrepreneur. I said this to someone, and then the young person was like, so what business do you want me to start? You're telling me to start a business. Where do I start? I have no money, I have no skills. So in as much as we are saying that we are skilling young people and we're encouraging them to be entrepreneurs, do we have spaces for them to grow in this perspective? Lastly, on occupying the king's table, I can tell you for sure, occupying the king's table and actually having people listen to you is not easy. It is not easy. For people like me, I had to start when I think I was in first year. I just started by volunteering through the Equity Wings to Fly program. Then I went on and volunteered with my friends in hospitals. By the time I was sitting at the Generation Unlimited Global Secretariat and even here in the Executive Steering Committee in Kenya, by the time I was getting to that level, it had taken me 5 years. 5 years just to build a voice for myself. So I'd encourage young people to not just sit. Let me tell you the truth. There's no public official or someone in power who's going to look for you staying at home and tell you to sit at the decision table. It's not going to happen. If you're waiting for someone to come and knock at your door and invite you, it's not going to happen. You're going to have to knock those doors for yourself. You're going to have to say that I am here. And lastly, just to encourage the young people, once you have that seat at the table, because what happens is you've struggled, then you get to the king's table, and then you get to the king's table, and then you keep quiet. So I'd encourage you, when you have a gift and when you get to that king's table, make sure that your voice is heard. Your voice must be heard. If I am a public official and now I'm in power, I should be able to know that Abigail is doing whatever she's doing in the community. I should be able to know what Nimrod is doing, what Bryan is doing, what Simon is doing. And the only way I'm going to know is if you speak up. You have to speak up. So really, I'd like to see that change here in Kenya and also at the global level.
Wow. So a lot of different points, but very specific. I really like that. So Simon, I'd like to finish a thesis question with you. You could just share your thoughts on what you feel needs to be changed. And maybe touch a bit, because you've worked quite a bit with different organizations. The one you started, obviously, UN75, but also very many, youth-led organizations. What would you, just to add on, as you're speaking about change, what do you think their influences? Because as Cynthia said, it's so true. There are so many youth-led organizations that are within the community and are trying to do, what they can. In your view, how effective do you feel they actually are? So as you answer what you feel has changed. Sorry, what you feel needs to change. Yeah. All
right. Even before I answer what needs to change, I just want to echo what Cynthia said. I really connected what she said around volunteering, because I think that's a big tool. Many young people don't have a very big understanding of what it means. Because one, from even a personal perspective or emotional perspective, there's a lot of fulfillment that comes from volunteering, because you're doing something without necessarily expecting anything in return. Of course, maybe you'll want to use that experience to quote it in your CV, or maybe as you've been interviewed for different opportunities. But I think when you do it from your heart, you are really giving back to society and you're actually making a difference. So I think just to encourage our listeners that, try as much as possible to volunteer. If you go to my LinkedIn account, you'll be surprised that almost 60% of my roles there are not paid roles. But I speak highly about them because I know I'm doing something different. I'm impacting somebody's life. So if you can do that, you don't have, because sometimes we are too keen to want to say, okay, what is it? What am I getting out of this? How much am I being paid to be a youth coordinator of the Commonwealth Youth Fellows or something like that? But you find that there are skills you get from that you can't quantify in monetary value. There's networks you're getting from that you can't, if you are to pay to attend these conferences or to meet these people, it will be so much money. So if you get an opportunity to apply to volunteer, please do that. Because I think also Abigail was talking about the seat on the table. Sometimes it takes so much time to get that seat. So why not create your own table and now put in the seats and find a team to fill in those seats. So you don't have to actually wait for a seat on the table. You can actually create your own table. And that's what I did with UN75. I just said, okay, I'm going to start my own youth organization that is geared towards shaping the community. And the thing is, once you get a seat on that table or create your own table, don't take too long. Don't sit there forever, because I think the mistake we do is, yes, you get that position, you're invited to be a youth advisor to the UN, but you want to take 20 years there. You don't want to give any other young person an opportunity to serve. So even for us who are here, even the panel itself, I know you sit in different youth bodies. How can you do your term, if it's 1 year, 2 years, do it effectively and then hand over, as opposed to campaigning again to want to retain the same seat? How do you empower others to take over from you? So I think that's what I would recommend as a change. Whereas young people, don't take too much time in those positions. Allow others to experience the same experience you've had, so that now you step out and do something different or help those who now succeed you. I guess that's one of the things we do in ISEC. And I'm happy in ISEC, we only serve as in one term. As much as you're passionate or as much as you're still very youthful, you're only allowed to serve one term. Rare cases that you serve in 2 years. So I think that's one of the changes I would want to see. Another change is collaboration. I feel that we have so many youth movements in this world, quite many. I'm sure like now, probably there are like 20 other Zoom conversations happening around the youth space. So how do we collaborate and work together? How do I tell Bryan, I'm running UN75, I know you do this at Ashoka, how do we work together? Because sometimes we are too focused on the glory we get from being recognized as youth leaders, and you forget that you can actually achieve something bigger when you work together. So my recommendation or change will be, how do we start collaborating moving forward as young people without that fear of, okay, what if I lose my identity as an organization? What if I lose my title as CEO or as founder? I think co-founder is as equally important as founder. So we should get away from those titles, because I think they confuse us as young people, where you want to be known as the founder of this big organization, but it can't get to that scale if you're not working with others. Yeah, so those are my 2 cents on that.
Those are big 2 cents, yeah. So thank you so much. I think we've covered quite a bit on this particular question. So many different ideas, yeah. And maybe just to summarize it, we talked about like acceptance, yeah. Change, as you know, Abigail has mentioned, and what Nimrod said as well, change is gonna happen whether we want it or not. If you're not able to accept, yeah, then it's a whole other problem. Something interesting that I didn't see coming at all, we're really talking about the concept of not only dealing with ourselves as young people, but preparing the future. We talked about ethical leadership. Abigail saying, you know, in the education system, it's true, we have the new training on how to deal with the environment. So as young people, we don't only have a role to ourselves, you know, as our age mates, we have a role to the future. Maybe our future children, and even just, you know, within the university, Simon had mentioned about mentorship programs, coaching, yeah, dealing with other young people. Cynthia has mentioned how she interacts with so many different young people. So as much as we have a responsibility in general as young people, we also have a responsibility to the future. Yeah, and in a big way, how we train the future and how we prepare the future is going to affect, you know, 25 years, that's, many of us will be what, probably in our 40s, I don't know how old you all are, but yeah, something like that. So yeah, quite very, very good points. I'm really, really glad we're able to tackle that. So when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, yeah, in the next 10 years, 2030 is when they should have been implemented, and as has already been mentioned, our implementation is not the best, at least here in Kenya. I'd like to start with you, Abigail. In general, what was, when the SDGs probably came over, what was your general view on the SDGs? And do you think we're on track in terms of, you know, as a country, are we on track in terms of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals? We can just start off with you, Abigail.
Initially, we had the Millennial Development Goals. So when I was joining campuses, when I think the SDGs was now starting. So I think it's very comprehensive, and it has, the 17 goals has tried to touch on every aspect of life, at least. If you're on track, I think we are trying, but I feel like information is with very few people. Well, I have seen in school, almost every course tries to teach something on Sustainable Development Goals. And speaking from a point of, I was a leader at Kenyatta University Environmental Club, and we tried as much as possible to come up with ways of creating awareness on the SDGs. We would hold conferences. We had one called Green Week, where we would just, you know, have different topics to talk about, including the Sustainable Development Goals. And when I did my internship, I did it with a company that deals with sustainability and sustainability reporting. And one thing I noticed there's a gap when it comes to the implementation. So currently, I know Safaricom is one of the companies that has been very vocal when it comes to sustainability reporting, and very few companies have actually implemented it. So we had a meeting sometime last year with I think I've forgotten the name, but it's something registrars, but they're the ones who regulate most of these companies. And the same way CBK regulates banks, they were saying it will come to a point where every company will have to give a sustainability report at the end of the year, because it allows people to understand how much energy they're using. They're able to measure their carbon footprints. Also, not just people, but the company as a whole. And I think it's a really good move, which I hope will be implemented. So I think we're on track, but we have a really short time, and information is with very few people. So at least I know something, and I believe each and every one of us knows something about the Sustainable Development Goals. When I was in campus, I saw ISEC doing a lot of they had a mannequin challenge at some point, which was very interesting, on creating awareness on the SDGs. So I think we can still do more. We can still do more when it comes to awareness, and try as much as possible to ensure every company is actually, writing a sustainability report or even the social impact assessment, so that you're able to see whether you're touching lives on the social aspect of it, and also making sustainable investments when it comes to finances, and also everything in general. So basically.
Nimrod, what's your view? What do you think of the SDGs in general, and are we on track?
So I think the SDGs have brought a lot of collaboration and commonality in purpose, especially even in organizations, because organizations have taken up the challenge of even having the SDGs as part of their vision, and mission statements. Because I know there is KCB Bank. KCB Bank has taken up that initiative whereby they have SDGs even included in their in bringing up the value system, bringing about the impact in the society that they need to see. Because it's not just about making money, it's bigger. It's a bigger picture that each and every organization can see itself. Every individual can actually identify with a certain SDG. And I think it's giving us that focus, whereby you're not just, shooting an arrow aimlessly. It's giving us focus, it's giving us a lot of purpose in life. Because it touches, SDGs touch, at least, rather everything. Let me just say everything, because for all the SDGs, they touch at least a challenge that is facing each and every other person. Someone will actually identify with the SDGs, and I think for me that that's a good thing. It's giving us a direction, and not just any kind of direction, but a strategic one.
Okay. Bryan, what's your view on the SDGs, and are we on track with them in terms of implementation?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
So yes, because there are certain sustainable development goals that we are on track, and we've kind of laid the right foundation for us to achieve. And it's, and this I'm talking from not from a global perspective, but more on Kenya, right?
Okay.
So you can actually, and Nimrod and Abigail have actually mentioned a few examples, right? And you can look at the education where you see the government is really trying. It's trying. And you see in Africa, actually, the Kenyan education system is celebrated as being one of the best systems in Africa, right? Because now we're talking about a good percentage of young people, or even our population, becoming literate. And that is good, being able to read and write and all this, right? So there are certain sustainable development goals that we're on track. And the reason as to why I'm insisting sustainable development goals and not just SDGs is it's important for us to realize that these are not just goals. They have a purpose, right? It's not like, a goalpost where you go and score and you say, yeah, tick, I've done this, tick, I've done that, tick, I've done this and that. The aim of the goals is the sustainability aspect of it, right? So we are trying to, or the reason as to why these goals were set is to try and give some sort of direction to every country, to every individual, to every organization, to every government, that for us to become a better world, for our children to be able to enjoy the same resources that we're enjoying today, and our parents and our grandparents enjoyed. For that sustainability to happen, then we need to put certain things in place to ensure that they get to enjoy the same resources, right? So the sustainability aspect of it is very important. And that is where now the no comes into place, right? Because we have different things that are kind of hindering this. We're talking about, for example, one of the leading or the developed countries pulling out of a major agreement. That now shows you, there's no alignment when we're talking about just recently, and Abigail will correct me if I'm wrong. I was reading about, the plastic, I don't know, the US, the plastic industry. They want us to I don't know, go 2 steps back. And you see, I think this thing was true. I can't speak to its, to the extent to which it was true, but I believe it was true. And by the mere fact that that the Green Pact, I think it's a Green Pact organization, brought this to light, it might not happen. But if it were not for them, there's some guys there in the government who would be quick to take this deal because it means more money in their pockets. So again, now we bring back the whole issue of ethical leadership, where we're not just talking about, yes, the government is trying to launch this universal health thing, and we're trying to ensure that every young person has access, not every young person, every woman, has access to good health care, especially when delivering a child, so that we bring up, the infant mortality or something like this, right? So some of these boxes, we're checking them. Then again, you hear that on the other side, people are using these opportunities to line their pockets. They're using these opportunities to make themselves rich. And that is where now we begin to question. Now, it moves from the sustainability bit to becoming a goal, right? And where people are just saying, yes, in Kenya, yes, we've done education, check. We've done everyone has education, check. We've done universal health, we are testing it, check. We've done environmental stuff and we are performing good, check. But underneath those systems, we're seeing the elements that are not aligned to making sure the sustainability aspect continues, right? So that in 10 years' time, we're not again talking about the US trying to influence our leadership to take back or to backroll some of the legislations that have been made. So you see, that's why I want to insist it's a sustainable development goal, not just a goal where we're just naming them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So it's very interesting how we very quickly ignore that first bit. There's a reason it's a first and sustainable, because otherwise it becomes, a lot of work that, won't be beneficial. Great, thank you so much. Simon, what's your view of the SDGs and if we are on track?
All right, great. Definitely want to also build up from what Bryan said, especially the word sustainability, because I think that's why we probably we get it wrong a bit. Because, for example, even in light of COVID, are there changes happening on the SDGs, or are we still pushing them as they are? If it's an issue with SDG number 4 on education and trying to make education work digitally, is it, can we sustain that, or after the pandemic, we'll have to put down all the online tools and go back to classroom setup? So I think those are the fundamental questions we need to ask ourselves. What changes has COVID made? Because I think what has happened is COVID has fast-tracked certain areas, especially in the tech space. Of course, people were innovating around education being online. Graduation now, people are doing graduations online nowadays. A lot of good has come from the fact that we've had to go fully online. When it comes to SDG number 8 on employment and work, we see now everything. Most people now are trying to adjust to remote working, which allows you to work anywhere in the world, which now probably improves on inequality, because now we're able to accommodate different diversities within the workplace, because now you can hire from any part of the world. So I think there's a lot of goodness that comes from what the pandemic has brought in regards to the SDGs. And I feel that the fact that now we have learned either quote unquote in the hard way, it allows us now to really focus on what is remaining in the next 10 years, because as you said, we're only 10 years to 2030. So when we look at 2030, will we say we have actually achieved all the goals, or does it mean that this season has allowed us to innovate for the next 25 years? Probably the next one will be 2045. I don't know whether that will be the tagline for that time, but I think that's what can we learn from now that will influence the next development goals. I'm not sure what word will be used, because we are coming from millennial development goals to now sustainable development goals. So I'm not sure what, it will be good to have young people start creating that tagline and see whether it will come from us. It would be nice to create the next 15 years goals here. But yeah, I think we're on track, and there's a great space for us to really innovate around that.
Okay, definitely a lot of space to do more. Cynthia, you can wrap up this particular question. What do you think in general the view of the SDGs, and are we on track?
Wow, when you first asked what was my view initially, to be honest, when the SDGs came up, I'm not going to lie that I was all excited. I had no idea what they were. So this was 2015. I was in my first year at the university. So I remember I was in class and some guys came to our class and said, oh, there's this club called Model MUN. And so my friends and I actually went to the club because we thought it was about modeling, to be honest. So we got there and they started talking about, this conference at the United Nations. People like us, we had just read about the UN in books. I didn't even know one of the headquarters of the UN was here in Nairobi. I had no idea. One of those things you cram and then you forget.
Yeah.
So, of course, we went for the first conference, the first KMUN conference, and I got there, and I think the theme of that year was creating a dignified future for all, if I'm not wrong. Okay. So, for me, I kept asking myself, why are we creating a dignified future? First of all, what does dignified even mean? Which is why I keep repeating this thing. Do young people own the narratives of whatever it is we are launching in this closed offices? Recently, I did some research with a group of young people, and we're focusing on SDG 4. And they say that I was talking about content creation, and I was asking them, why is it that content that is more lifestyle based tends to have more viewership compared to discussions like this, what we're talking about? And they were very open, and they told me discussions like this look like discussions for the elite. So sorry, this thing keeps falling. Yeah, so they told me that discussions like this look like discussions for the elite. And I was like, wow. And it's only at that point that now I started asking myself, because I did my own observations. I was at the KMUN, and I realized that KMUN is mostly attended by students from public universities. And then you observe the EMUN, the one for the younger kids. And I looked at the caliber of the schools, and it's majorly, Hillcrest and all. And I saw very few normal schools, I would say, schools that are where majority of the children in Kenya go to. And then it hit me, for sure, this conversation appears to be something for the elite. And I think it's only that we at the university level now get to have the opportunity for KMUN, because that's how I discovered Simon. And I've also observed the caliber of students who attend the Simon, because I work at the UN. So I usually observe every time that these conferences, I'm always observing.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of awareness, when we talk about progress, we are failing somewhere. I don't know whether it's a communication problem or something, but I know the UN has a whole group for communicating the SDGs. But one of the solutions that came up, and when we talk about progress, I think we are not far off when it comes to awareness, because the students were saying that through debate clubs and EMUN conferences, despite them being in certain schools, raise awareness on at least the SDGs. And also some courses at the university, like law, development, international relations, have been talking about SDGs. So a few more people know what the SDGs are, but not everyone knows about the SDGs. I interviewed Ambassador Macharia Kamau, who's the current PS for Foreign Affairs, but then he was the permanent rep to the UN, and he was one of the co-leads of coming up with the SDGs. And he really talked about the importance of countries coming together. And when you talk about countries coming together, I think it's important for countries to prioritize. And I think that has happened. I think Kenya has prioritized 4 SDGs, if I'm not wrong, education being one of them. I don't remember the other 3. So countries have prioritized, but we also need to ask ourselves, do we have enough money to finance the SDGs? Because I think where we are, from a discussion we did at Strathmore University on financing the SDGs, we've talked about KCB. Safaricom is also putting SDGs at the core of their business strategies. but not all businesses have come on board to put money to support the SDGs. And if you, there's this lady called Miriam Sidibe, and Miriam Sidibe runs, is it an organization? She runs the Brands on a Mission kind of thing. Yeah, it's called Brands on a Mission. And what she's doing is she's getting businesses, or rather the private sector, to come together and implement the SDGs. But she is focusing on hand washing, hygiene, and nutrition. And she was saying, only way for us to have money when it comes to the SDGs is for private sector to come together. But are all people in the private sector aware of what they need to do when it comes to financing the SDGs? No. Yeah. Do they all have the money? Safaricom makes a lot of money, Equity makes a lot of money, but do they all have money? That's also something we need to put together. So when we talk about progress, I think where we are lagging behind mostly is when it comes to financing the SDGs. Otherwise, we are improving a little. I think more kids are having access to the internet now. We are still far off, but I trust that the generation behind us really has access to technology compared to us. We have children talking about robotics at a very early age. I'm just learning about these things very recently. We're having conversations on AI. All these things will be important when it comes to the future of work. So at least there's improvement, but yeah, we're still far off. And probably one of the solutions will be access to internet connectivity. And why I keep talking about access to internet connectivity is because I'm very passionate about SDG 4, because I believe that we can't all be rich. Let's just be honest, we're not all going to be rich, but at least education should be an equalizer. But we also need to ask ourselves, if education is an equalizer and each school should have access to the internet, do these schools have the infrastructure to support the infrastructure for the internet? If that's the right way to put it, because you find that a lot of classrooms in the village are they're mud walled buildings. So how are these buildings going to have internet? I don't know. Yeah, so yeah, still a lot of debate there, but yes, financing will really help to progress the SDGs.
Okay. So another set of really good points. I always feel whenever we have such discussions, there's always like I don't know, maybe it's an internal sense, but there always seems to be a need that we have to do some of these things today, now. And from a lot of the solutions many of you have brought up, a lot of these things will take time. And we can start now. We can start Bryan talked about laying the foundation. So some of the SDGs have a really good foundation, but we might not see the fruits of it very clearly until a bit of time, yeah. So sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's just myself, there's sometimes a bit of a lack of patience. You have to plant the seed and then, sort of grow it before we start seeing results. But all in all, I'm really grateful for all the discussion. So it's already 11:40. I'd like us to do the next set of questions, but I'd like to combine it so that we don't take too much time. And then we can also hear from the participants if they have any other comments they'd like to add, because we've had a very rich conversation so far. So many Pandora boxes have been opened here. We can have discussions about so many various things here, which is great. But I'd like to start off with Bryan, this next question. So we've talked about where we think the world will be, what you think needs to be changed, and in general, what your view is on the SDGs. If you could touch on what you think the main hindrance is, stopping us from achieving these changes and these things that we'd like to achieve. And in combination with that, what do you think the role of international organizations is? Do you think they're helpers? Do you think they're a hindrance as well? What would you say? So in general, what do you think could be stopping us? If that's, in the society, our practices, whatever it might be. And specifically international organizations, what role are they currently playing? Bryan, you can start us off.
The bad thing about being the first one to speak is you can't piggyback on what other people are saying. And I like piggybacking on what other people are saying.
Very intentional, yes.
It's the beauty of being in a panel. Yeah, but let me just give this a shot. So I think one of the key things that I believe is a challenge and is a hindrance is one, the systems that have been put in place that are, you know, either act as enablers or, you know, barriers of entry to what we're trying to achieve, right? So when you're looking at, for example, and we've touched on this throughout this whole conversation, right? We've discussed about, you know, the type of person or the type of skills that we need for the future of work or for a better tomorrow. And we've discussed about, you know, where we are in the SDGs and our contribution towards that, either as individuals or as a country. And then now we look at systems, structures, and then culture. And culture is just the way of life, right? So for example, when I talk about the systems, and this is where, you know, I remember someone asking, and I wanted to contribute then, but I think I would have extended that conversation longer. It's at Ashoka, we normally talk about system change social entrepreneurs, right? And the thing is, when we look at the current situation as is, when we look at, say, for example, education and the barriers that we're currently experiencing and the challenges that have emerged as a result of COVID, and those that were prior that have been really, you know, blown out because of COVID, we begin to ask ourselves, is there a systemic issue that was, you know, that has contributed to this effect that we can now begin to address, right? And one of the key things now that is very, very clear in Kenya, it's morals, like ethical fiber. That is the one key thing that we're seeing day in, day out. When you're talking about corruption, when you're talking about people polarizing other people because of, you know, their ethnic background and all these things, it boils down to morality and ethical fiber. So now we begin to ask ourselves, how then can we nurture that type of thinking, or young people to begin to look at this as a systemic issue and then come up with solutions to address these problems. And I remember, you know, Simon talking about, you know, we have different actors within the youth space and within every other space. And this is so true. Another systemic issue that exists is people and institutions working in silos, right? Like everyone working within their own space without realizing that if we begin to share resources, if we begin to share knowledge, if we begin to share skills, if we collaborate, we could actually push this yardstick further. We can go that extra mile and achieve these goals, right? So, for example, even in my capacity as a children and youth years program leader at Ashoka East Africa, I've made it a point to reach out to various youth-led organizations and tell them, let's form this WhatsApp group, let's discuss, let's share knowledge, let's share resources, because we are all working towards transforming the growing up experiences of young people. Let's see what we can do together. So I believe that there's some of these systemic issues that we need to be very attuned to so that we now begin to address them, right? And this is not just within Kenya, it's in Africa, where we're seeing, you know, let's say, for example, bilateral trade between Kenya and Tanzania. People are having issues just because, you know, okay, we don't want to work with this country because they seem to be, you know, very aggressive and something like this. But then the question becomes, is it possible for us to work together to improve the quality of life of our citizens, right? So what are those issues that are resulting to those, you know, that are creating those barriers? And it boils down to some of those systemic issues. And that's why Ashoka is very keen to, when we're looking at who are the young entrepreneurs, young social entrepreneurs and social innovators who are tackling systemic issues. And how we get there, actually I wanted to disagree a bit with Cynthia when she asked, you know, if all of us are, say, doing like the providing sanitary towels or doing what you know, Elizabeth and Abigail are doing in terms of tree planting, what is it leading to? I think what it's leading to, and I'll use some phrase that one of the Ashoka fellows used, is let's not ask for permission, but ask for forgiveness, right? If we begin to act and if we begin to provide solutions, be it as small as it is, as we think they are, then people will begin to see that there is something happening. And one of us will be able to come up with a solution that not only affects or influences the immediate community that we are in, but could also lead to influence policy. But how do we get there? We get there because we have many actors within the same space, And we're beginning to learn something from these actors. And we're saying, indeed, there's a systemic issue that this solution is solving. So how do we then amplify this solution to get to that place where it actually informs the policy around, right? So be it, providing sanitary towels or giving people access to education, if many actors begin to do that, it kind of drives your attention there, and you're asking yourself, why is it that many people are going to this specific sector? There has to be an issue that is there. And then once we do that, we look at all the solutions and we say, aha, this is the solution that is addressing like a broad spectrum, and it can actually influence policy. And when we look at policy, it's not just about writing these papers and putting them somewhere, but it's actually informed by work on the ground. That is where we come in, right?
Yeah.
It's where our actions come in, where we're saying, yes, where Elizabeth, Abigail are doing something within the environmental space. These are the steps they've taken. And if we create this policy, it will support them and other young people within the space. Now we come to institutions that, international institutions. You see, their role is to inform, it's to play in that big game, the big brother, because they have that convening power. They have that, they have that ability to bring key stakeholders and have them listen to what is happening, right? So if we have all these actors working towards influencing policy at grassroots level, which influence national level, and then, regional and even international levels, then the international body's role is to now convene all these people. And when we're talking about, SDG 4 and their targets within that SDG, and we're saying, we know X person in Nairobi, for example, that teacher who won the Teacher's Prize, right? We bring them there and we begin to listen to such people because they don't have the capacity to formulate policy, but they are key actors, right? They've been doing this, they have that skill with them, and we begin to learn from them and share these insights with all these people. We also create safe spaces, and I had someone say this, safe spaces for even young people to come on board, right? Because currently we are seeing that the population in Africa, in India, any developing world that you're thinking about right now, it's a young population. And who are the people who are coming up with the solutions? It's young people. So now international bodies, the big brothers, not only create that platform, that king's table. I like what Simon said, you create your own table, but also there at the high level, right? Create spaces, not as a tokenism, we had, Bryan come in and speak. No. Not just about tokenism and saying we had a young face or a young person, a young voice in the conversation, but also to listen and bring these people as key partners, key influences in this whole process. So it's not just about, me saying, hey, posting on Facebook, hey, I've been selected to go and speak. No, I can actually trace that to, this is what it informed. This is what it's doing. And I'm leading this because of this and this and this. But we are all right. And I like what Cynthia said. It starts with volunteering, as Simon said. It starts with understanding that we can begin to offer solutions and begin to get a better understanding of our work and then articulate it within those small circles. Someone will pick it up, you get more, a national role, and then get to that bigger role. So that's my thinking.
Okay, very broad. Like that's a whole document, but really good. Thank you so much. Nimrod, what would you say is our biggest hindrance, at the moment in terms of achieving these different changes we need to achieve? And in terms of international organizations, what role are they playing at the moment? Are they a helper? Are they a hindrance? What would your view be?
So I think I'll just pick it up from where Bryan left it. Just speaking about systems and processes, I think we are at a point where we are just so familiar with processes and systems that have been put in place. And it's quite a hindrance because you'll find that, Abigail said, that change is inevitable and change does not come easy, because if you realize, most of the jobs that will be phased out, or rather are being phased out right now, due to the advent of technology that we are in, these are mostly routinely or repetitive kind of jobs. So you'll find most of the administrative kind of jobs, we have systems in place to do that. You'll find also accountants, it's something that also shocked me. And if there is no proactivity, if there's no proactivity to understand that my role, my work, my role, or rather my job is getting phased out, I may be in the next 5 years, I'll not be anywhere in the picture. So it's just about getting to understand how can I reinvent myself. As an accountant, we're talking about big data. How can I incorporate big data in what I'm doing? Because data is the new gold. And even as HR, a while back, 5 years ago, we were saying that people are the most, they are the gold of organizations, and at this time, the thing that we are talking about is data being the new gold. And if we cannot sort of position ourselves in the right way, getting the right skills, just like most of the panelists are talking about, we are going to be phased out. So we are supposed to be proactive in every sense, in every kind, just so that we can be better positioned to make the change that needs to be there. And you'll find something about getting out of your cocoon is that you will become more aware. We're talking about volunteering. And, because I found even for, I've had a lot of engagements with university students, and you'll find that most of them are not aware about what is happening right now. They're not aware about the SDGs. They're not aware about, the trends that are happening right now in the workplace. And there is need for us to understand that, that there is change that is happening. And how else will you know that there is a change that is happening if you do not show initiative, and if you do not get involved? So this is very important to note. And then the other question about the role that international organizations play. I think just taking it from what international organizations have been doing, which I think is good and they should continue doing, is giving platforms whereby people can collaborate, and partner. And for example, because in school I was part of ISEC, and I was helping out with recruitment, and you'll find that with ISEC, it really brought a lot of, there was a lot of fostering, of diversity, because you'll find there are exchange programs whereby someone can go for an internship in Egypt, an internship in Nigeria, and you'll not be, and guys are not wary about, your age, your race, your sex. And I think that's a really good thing, because it sort of literally gives us all the right to use, the world becoming a small village, whereby I can have a conversation with someone who is in Egypt and have, a rational, a logical and a rational kind of conversation, which makes sense and will help us, in terms of international development. And that's the sphere that we should find ourselves in. Yeah, so I think the role that international organizations play right now in terms of collaboration is commendable, and they should also sort of get to understand, like Bryan was talking about, getting to understand what is happening in the grassroots, and it being propagated till it gets to the international platform. So I think it's a good platform that they're creating, and just probably find more innovative ways of getting to understand what is happening in the grassroots. Yeah.
Okay. Just a question, because your work is something that's really important to a lot of young people. In your professional view, because you're a career strategist, do you foresee any major changes? Will we need to be a generation that's going to have to adapt to many various things, or do you feel there'll be some sort of sustainability or stability? Because when we look at our previous generations, where someone could keep one job for so long, currently, I don't know if it's because of the current situation where we are, where many people have had to be, as you say, take initiative, be proactive. Is that a quality you think we need to be able to have, throughout, in the future, proactivity, that initiative is something you always need, to have? Or do you think there'll come a time where things will, quote unquote, more or less calm down and people can, don't say slack or relax, but that there's no, the need to be proactive might not be there. Do you ever foresee such a future, per se?
Yeah, so I think just taking it from, well, there is a research that was done by Oxford University, I think a year ago, concerning the future of work. And the report showed that about 45% of the roles that we know right now will be phased out. And that's what I'm saying, there things to do with repetitive kind of jobs. So we have things to do with, manufacturing workers, traveling agents, bank tellers, probably even, construction workers. And it's just getting to understand that, as much as we need to be proactive, there is also that element of where productivity may first go down, because there is that, the learning curve, let me put it as so, where before you get to where you want to be, there is that shift that is going to happen. So it's about, it's just it's for us to now understand that times are changing, and getting to understand, if you are in marketing, what is the change that is happening in marketing? If you are into international development, what is happening? Get to understand the kind of conversations that are happening in the World Economic Forum. And now just get to understand, or rather just backtrack and see, how can I bring that change? Rather just getting to understand, where can I fit myself in the change? Yeah.
I like that. How can you fit yourself into the change? Because it's gonna happen anyway. Great.
Yeah.
What would you say is the main hindrance, stopping us from achieving these changes, and particularly the role of international organizations? Cynthia, you can go ahead.
Oh, I had Abigail. Since I wasn't so sure. Yeah, so when you talk about hindrances, and I think it's something we rarely talk about, nutrition, and especially nutrition for children, because I remember when I was growing up, I wasn't a snacker. I wouldn't eat, we would eat fries as a reward for being number one in class. But right now I see fast foods everywhere. KFC is opening here and there. And I am not condemning kids who eat these things, because sometimes we've eaten them. But I'm just wondering, are we paying enough attention to the food children eat? Because remember, what a child eats also influences how they think. And there's this report that was recently released by UNICEF, and it was saying that there's a lot of food, but not enough good food. So I think we need to see that as a hindrance to the development of children. Many children are now either obese or underweight or stunted. I mean, we need to really address this issue so that we have children who are developing properly, and especially now with the onset of climate change, do we have enough food? And I think I was really impressed by one of the young people I interviewed. She's called Elizabeth Okulo, probably you know her. She has a greenhouse farm in Juja. And let me tell you, when I went to her greenhouse farm, I really changed my perspective on farming, because at some point I was still thinking, okay, farming is still a hard job. Not that I want to be a farmer, but I really saw, but there she was explaining and seeing how she was running a business. I could see the influence of her farm to the lives of children and young people in Kenya as they develop into leaders. So that's one. The other thing I think we're facing as a hindrance is behavior change. So right now we're talking about schools should have access to the internet, kids should be digitized, we have some schools with laptops and all that. But then you find that at some point you'll find that these kids know how to use these laptops and computers better than their own teachers. I've just been seeing memes running around that if you want to help me, if you want me to help you join a Zoom meeting, you have to pay me 500 shillings. So we need to ask ourselves, is there a barrier where we have a generation that does not want to adapt to planning lessons online, to doing all these things digitally? because then it is the children who suffer. And I think that's a whole conversation, because then it means that how teachers are trained at the university or at the college level should also change, because there is no way you're going to teach something that you are not taught. That's how the education system works. One of the other hindrances, I think, is really the issue of policy, but we've talked a lot about that, implementing policy. And also the role of politics and governance. I was reading a report by the Mo Ibrahim Foundation. Mo Ibrahim Foundation is really focused on leadership and governance in Africa. And they were saying that a lot of young people don't trust their governments to do stuff. But also you also need to look at it. Do we have enough young people, or enough people who probably have been marginalized due to disability or race or anything? Are they enough when it comes to positions of leadership and power? Because that's the only way we are going to change. There was a time Senator Naisula Lesuda was saying, when she joined parliament as a young woman, people used to call her a flower girl because she was young, she's beautiful, and everybody just assumes you're just here to watch. And she really had to prove that I am a leader and I am committed to improving the lives of people in my community. And I think she's been a role model to so many young people. So I think when we talk about improving the role of young people in leadership and governance, it's really important to have young people occupy that space. The Mo Ibrahim Foundation also talked about how we are losing young people to violent extremism. You know, there's been high cases, and when I was growing up, the only terror attack I'd ever heard of was the 1998-97 bomb blast. Yeah. But now in my teenage years and in my campus life, suddenly there's so many things happening, and it's scary. When I was young, you could easily walk into church. Now people have to inspect my bag just to go into a place of worship. And we're losing young people to these kinds of vices. So I think that is something that we really need to look into. And surprisingly, we are losing even more women into violent extremism, because apparently they can easily be used as agents of violence without being suspects. That I was very, very, very surprised. So those are some of the hindrances that I can talk about. When it comes to the role of international organizations, I think they're key stakeholders when it comes to funding, because we've talked a lot about this, funding. And you see a lot of projects done, especially on infrastructure, are usually done by World Bank. Those in private sector, I think, are done by IFC. So I think they're really key stakeholders when it comes to putting money together to do stuff. Advocacy and policy change, Bryan talked about that already. And also research. Simon has talked about data. And I remember there was a time Bob Collymore, before he passed on, he talked about the future of communities and the future of Africa being in data scientists and data analysts. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. So international organizations really play a big role when it comes to researching and collecting data. If I ask you, for example, for me, whenever I want to read about reports on children, I'd go to UNICEF. If I want to read about women, I'd go to UN Women. If I want to look into development, I'd go to World Bank. That's where I get all the data. So I think they're really important in that. They're also very important when it comes to technical support. And when we talk about technical support, when you go into international organizations, you'll find people called specialists or officers. So you find some in communication, you find some who are nutrition specialists who ensure that we have enough policies or enough nutrition systems for children and for people in communities. They really advise governments on all this. You'll find education specialists who say, oh, Singapore is doing very well when it comes to the education system, and then they'll advise our government to put in certain systems so that our CBC works. Also very important when it comes to documenting, because there's doing all these great things, and then there's future generations being able to extract the data from somewhere and improve on it. UN Women, I think they recently published a book on women, and women who've really been in this space of politics and governance and leadership. I haven't read the book, but I have seen it. And I think it's important for future generations to read about people like Martha Karua or Phoebe Asio, many of us in this generation probably don't know women who fought for the spaces we are in the 80s or the 90s. And the only way we're going to know is if we read these books. And you know, we may say that it's just a book, but publishing a book is not as simple. It's very expensive to publish a high quality book. But when you find organizations, international organizations documenting these things, then I think we're heading in the right way.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Simon, what would you say the main hindrance is stopping us from achieving the changes you think we need to make? And yeah, as well, what's the role of international organizations according to you?
All right, I'll keep it short because I notice the time, we're already past time, and I'm a champion of listening from the audience as well. So I'll probably even, because most people have mentioned what I've said, so I'll keep it very short so that I allow our audience to ask us questions or maybe comment. So yeah, just to correct Cynthia, it was Nimrod who talked about data, just for some correction. So I think I'll just go to the last part, which the role of international organization. I think they're meant to be catalysts or implementers. So I think their role is to ensure that they are the right platforms, because as I said, as much as building your own table looks very nice, it requires some resources, it requires some time, it requires some people who have gone ahead of you. So I think it's how can they facilitate, how can they be the catalysts that support the young people to be able to build their own tables. This is either in the entrepreneurial space, because all these SDG goals can only be solved by business solutions. There's a need for collaboration between NGOs, private sector, the public sector, and the government. So I think if international organizations can mobilize their influence, their networks, to now push the governments to create safe spaces or come up with policies that support the implementation or the tracking of the SDGs to see whether we're on track or not, I think then that facilitates a lot, because I think that particular part of finances will be sorted out by that collaborative effort. Because I think most of us have said it's a very expensive affair for us to actually get to achieving the SDGs. So the more people will come on board to support, and I've seen the UN, I've seen the World Bank, the amount of money being spent on COVID, unfortunately, for a case where it's still an ongoing case on how we have used our finances, but there's a lot of resources when people come together. The clear evidence from what we've seen from COVID. So when people collaborate, then I think we'll have enough resources to achieve these sustainable development goals. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Abigail, as you wrap up this particular question, what would you say the main hindrance is, and the role that you feel international organizations are currently playing?
Well, I honestly think most of the things I wanted to say have already been mentioned, but I'll just insist on our systems. I always say our Kenyan system is set up in a way that there's no room for integrity or there's no room for ethical leadership, because there's always you're always being blocked when you want to be a leader who is of integrity. And something else that is a major hindrance, especially in environmental conservation, is greed and corruption. All these projects that are coming up, which we know are unhealthy for the environment, there's always someone who's out to get something. There's a cut for someone, and I remember we fought so hard for the SGR not to pass through the Nairobi National Park, but it did anyway. And I mean, we did everything possible. We went to court, we did all these things, and they've still been done. And all these other projects that are coming up, we'll keep talking about them, we'll keep taking them to court, but the government will always have a say. So corruption, greed, that is like two of the things that I'll insist on. I don't want to speak a lot on that. Also, the role of international organizations. I volunteer with Poverty Foundation, which is an international organization, and one thing I have noted is that they have a capacity to reach more people. Another thing is they give a lot of youth an opportunity to be exposed and to network. Because, for example, the one I work for, there are chapters everywhere, and so there's a chapter in Africa, and each chapter has to have someone who's leading a particular country. And so most of the work we do is we create awareness and sensitization to the grassroots. So as a youth, you're empowered, you're exposed, and yeah, you also tend to find yourself building a new passion and also just discovering yourself more and your leadership capacities. So I think that is all I can say.
Okay, thank you so much. So just before we wrap up, I'd just like to remind the attendees, feel free to ask if you have any comments or there's a question you'd like to ask, feel free to ask. Those who are on Facebook as well, feel free to ask. What we'll do after, just to get the conversation going, we'll just have a question on Twitter as well, and anyone who has any comments would like to add, also share the link for this particular this whole session, this webinar, so people can get ideas and give their input on what they thought as well. So this is not a conversation that will end here. We'll continue having that conversation. So I can see, so we'll sample just a few comments. So please send them in, and then afterwards we'll go to the final question as we wrap up. It is 12:12, at least according to my watch. I'd like us finished latest 12:30, so that we can keep to time. I'm sure people, this panel is a very busy panel. People are very occupied, so I don't want to take too much time. So I'm going to start off. We have a comment here. Let me open it up. Yes, we have here from Nyana Deng. She says, okay, so they say that the world can be made a better place by making yourself a better person. We all have to agree on something, that everything begins with you. We will never influence the world by just being like, we should work on, doing one thing every day to change the world. Thank you so much, Nyana. Peter says this was a really good discussion. I could not agree more. It was very insightful. His challenge to the youth is the need to change. Okay, so it's not a want, the need to change, and the narrative to, concrete action programs. That's a very powerful statement, concrete action programs. Thank you so much, Peter. Cynthia is telling us thank you. So yeah, please check out her blog, that's on Cynthia Untamed. And we'll be, I think if you've been following throughout our, Instagram, we've been sending, profiles of each our different speakers. So please make sure you follow their work. They're doing really, really amazing work. Any other comments? There's a question. So Sandra is asking, any suggestions of places we could volunteer at during these times? So Simon, would you like to answer that question? And probably anyone, Simon can start us off, and then anyone else would like to add. So she's asking any suggestions of places people could volunteer, especially during these times.
All right, I would say if you can log into search for opportunities portal. I think there are quite a number on online opportunity portal, opportunity for youth, opportunity for African youth. So just search anything that is an opportunity, and then now you can do the due diligence, whether it's on their right website, because some of these links sometimes don't work. So normally most of them summarize the opportunities, and then they give you access to the website of the organization. So you can check that out and then just apply. You never know which one will take you in, which one will not. So don't limit yourself to one application. Just try and then just hope they'll get back to you. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I do. Just check these platforms which are accessible online, and also LinkedIn as well.
Yes. Anyone else would like to add? Cynthia, or anyone else really?
Yeah. When it comes to volunteering, I'd encourage young people to not just look at the UN and the World Bank as volunteering platforms. There is a high probability it's going to be very difficult for you to volunteer right now at the moment as you begin. I'd encourage you to find out what your friends are doing. Remember, your resources, your greatest resources are people. Find out where are your friends volunteering. Start from there, even if it means starting from Kenyatta National Hospital, your local police station. That's where you're supposed to start, ideally. You can also search online. The Africa Leadership Institute has a project called Project Pakati, and they have this youth leadership directory sort of thing. So you can just search, if you're in Kenya, just search organizations in Kenya, then try and see if they're looking for volunteers. Project Pakati.
Great, thank you so much. I'd also just to add, sorry, anyone else would like to add?
I'd like to just say something. Just on top of what Simon and Cynthia said, I also believe in just acting, right? And we've been talking about this throughout the whole talk, right? It's identifying challenges within your surrounding and acting, providing a solution. Because at the end of the day, Cynthia has talked about this, you started, when you were first year. I also did start when I was 21 years old. Today, actually, I was supposed to have a call today, almost the same time, with young people who are 16, 15, 13, who've come up with organizations. Being a change maker, in that term change maker, this means you're able to identify a problem, empathize with it, form a team, and come up, empower the team to really understand the problem and offer a solution. So it's not about having an organization, it's not about, all that. It's just about being aware of your surrounding and what you can do to help someone in need. And then how you put this down when you're applying now for the big volunteer organizations such as World Bank, UN, those are some of the things they look at actually, those are some of the key things they look for. So it's also nice just to see, okay, if no organization is, if you can't find an organization that is willing to onboard you, create your own opportunity, look, within your surrounding and provide a solution.
Great, thank you so much. So in addition to that, normally in Simon, we have a newsletter that we normally send you, and we normally add on opportunities that we think could interest young people. So you can also subscribe to that as well. So I'd like to move on to other comments that have just come in. So we have one from Tafa Dandazi. I hope I said that right. Yes. So they say that we need more young people to enter mainstream politics and be elected by the people. By participating in politics, raise awareness in such a big way, as everyone would be glued to the politics during elections. So to mainstream issues of the environment into political spaces would bring the change we need. The detail is in the politics. Okay, that's definitely a very different perspective. But thank you so much.
Which I disagree.
You disagree. Why do you disagree? The details is in the politics. You can just add on to that briefly before we move on.
And I'm going to go from one person I think we're very familiar with, Rafael Obonyo, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you guys know of him. Have you asked yourself why he's not a politician? And he's actually said that he's been approached once or twice to take up one of those roles. But have you asked yourself why he's not one? I think it's yes, that is a space where you can create influence when you think about policy and stuff like that. But it's not the only space.
Yes.
That is just where I'm coming from. So don't be surprised if many of the people who are on this call are doing amazing things, but will never feature in any political role. Because again, there's the bad side of it where you get influenced now, with the forces within.
Yes. Politics is definitely difficult. Just before I go to Peter, this Christabel Netondo, she says, in as much as most OI are key actors in the implementation of the SDGs through funding, I feel like the over-reliance by African states on the funding makes our leaders lose values on what their citizens really need and only focus on the win of the funding, but not on the win-win situations of the citizens. So yeah, that's a really interesting take. Does anyone have any views they'd like to add on to that? Yeah, the over-reliance of African states on the funding is making leaders lose values on what their citizens really need. Anyone would like to comment on that? Okay, Abigail?
So initially I had talked about taking responsibility for our actions. And when I speak about this, I'm talking about climate change, for example. So we have the Green Climate Fund that is ideally supposed to be given to help vulnerable communities to run projects that actually help them mitigate and adapt to climate change effects. So when you look at the processes that it takes for us to actually receive the money, first of all, if it's a small organization in an indigenous community, it takes about 2 years to get accreditation. And so, for example, in Kenya, there's an organization that is supposed to receive the funds, which is the NEMA. And we know our country, we know our systems. Before the money actually gets to us, everyone has taken a cut. So I feel like we have to get to a point where we find means of raising funds for ourselves and be responsible for the kind of investments and the change that we want to see. So yeah, for example, like when we had the Mozambique cyclone Idai, I believe in a certain way, I do not want to explain the science right now, but it is tied to climate change. And African states are not very resilient when it comes to natural disasters. We don't have the capacity to prevent or even react to such calamities. So, I mean, if that happens to us, does it mean we have to sit and wait for someone to come and help us? We have to find means, and we have money. We have money. If people are eating 43 billion of COVID funds, I mean, seriously, we have money, but we're just not channeling it the right way. And as Bryan has mentioned, when you get into politics, like I said, our systems are set up in such a way that there's no room for integrity. There is no room for you to actually run things as it should. So we try on the side to do things that will bring change. In as much as it's little, we're actually bringing change. So yeah, I think I agree with her. We need to stop over relying on funds from outside. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more as well. The next comment is from Nathalie Chinyari, and they say, I think on concerning future leaders and all it all starts with and what you want. I mean by this is passion. Most leaders are there on their seats for money, but don't have a heart to change their society and country. I think the world can be a better place with the help of organizations such as the African Leadership Academy, which nurtures young leaders like me and others to go for what they want to be, go-getters for a better society and a world as well as a country. So thank you so much for that comment. So I'd like us to the final question that I would like to ask our panelists. So for any other comments you might have, please feel free to also put them on our Facebook page so that everyone else can see it. As I've mentioned, we'll continue having this conversation. We're taking all ideas and comments you might have. But I'd like us to wrap up this really, really impactful conversation. I honestly wish we had more time. But the final question I'd like to ask is, if you were in less than a minute, let's say about 30 seconds, what's the one piece of advice you would give the United Nations or you'd give the Secretary General? What's the one piece of advice you'd like to give them? Simon, I'd like to start with you. What's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Pressure is on. I will tell him to focus on the youth envoy. I think I've been following the youth envoy, and I believe that if that department is empowered, because as most of us said, many young people don't know this information about SDGs, reports about how far we are in achieving them. So I'm sure many young people don't even know this a whole department called the UN Youth Envoy. So I will tell him to focus on it, ensure that there are key strategies towards empowering it. If they can even get more people to work within, help that department, well and good. We're here. And I speak on behalf of all the 6 of us here. We're ready to join the envoy to do whatever we can do, even with volunteering, to just give insights and ideas. So yeah, definitely invest on the youth envoy and what they do. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I should do picky ponky. That's how I picked you, Simon. I should just say now. Abigail, what would be your one piece of advice for the Secretary General?
Well, I would say the UN is a very respected entity. Like, everyone listens to them. So my only piece of advice is you have great policies, you're doing a lot, but there's a problem with the implementation, and I just love that UN would work on the implementation.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much. Cynthia, what would your one piece of advice be to the Secretary General?
I tell him to look at the role of religious leaders, because I realized they have a lot of influence. When you want kids to be vaccinated, it is the religious leaders who convince the mothers that the vaccine is not against God's will, such and such and such. So religious leaders from different perspectives, they're very important.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Nimrod, what's the one piece of advice you'd give the Secretary General?
I think just to highlight, I think UN is a benchmark for very many themes, and also policies, governance to organizations and governments, and I feel that like the one piece of advice that I'd give the Secretary General would be just emphasizing on leading and being, to continue leading. I mean, just governing, being that point of the UN. I think just continue to lead and governing, just to become perfect examples. Yeah, just to become perfect examples of policies and regulations that work. So that governments and other institutions that are coming up can actually follow the same track, and just for better development, I'd say. So I think that's the one thing that I would tell him, just to continue leading the UN in coming up with better policies and regulations which really work.
Okay. Finally, Bryan, what's the one piece of advice you'd give the Secretary General?
Before I share that, I just wanted to say, being the first one to speak and being the last one to speak, it's a bit of a disadvantage. When you're the first one, it's a lot of pressure. When you're the last one, everyone has said everything. So that's the interesting thing. And everyone is just on point, So my advice, and I'm going to borrow this one from what the panelists have said and from what was said in a different conference I was part of. And the person who said it, like, if you're not at the table when the decisions are being made, then they're being made for you, right? And so what I'm referring to here is I would advise for the Secretary General to just have a look around and see which voices are not being represented. And I like what Cynthia said about the religious leaders. So the question then becomes what other voices need to be heard that are not being represented there, fully. And that's the thing. So that the decisions that are being made there are not being made for people without their knowledge. So that's it.
Brilliant. Like that. Quite the way to end it. So what voices are not being heard? And it's such a great way to end it, because the whole point of this whole UN75 is to actually listen and hear to the voices that we either never hear from or rarely hear from. So honestly, this has been a more than brilliant discussion. Like, I had a vision, I had an idea, like I wouldn't lie, I had a dream about how this was gonna happen. It was a great dream. But this has surpassed that, Honestly, a brilliant, I don't know if the panel, the attendees are, watching and, have seen a brilliant conversation. And what's even better, because while we were organizing this, we were trying to find, individuals who are experts in all these different areas. And we're trying to find, young people, but still experts. And sometimes, even talking to our board and other people, there's a concern as, you don't want to bring people who are not, as good. And the fact that it was not difficult to find all these different individuals to get in touch with you, in my view, is a very big testament of the kind of future we'll have, a very bright future. I couldn't be more grateful. I know I said thank you so many times in our emails, but I honestly could not be more grateful. This is a Saturday morning It's running from 10 a.m. to 12:30. Some of you had class, some of you at home, looking relaxed, some of us had work, and we still took the time to come and have this discussion. And you guys gave more than your all, in all honesty. Like, you guys did research, you're citing papers, you're citing books, you're giving advice like proper professionals. And I'm so proud to, have even moderated this. I won't lie, I'm so happy I was not a panelist. It would have been real pressure, it would have just been, you're hearing everyone's comments, and then you want to, how do you, but all of you have really stepped up. You've done a fantastic job. A really big thank you, honestly, from the Simon team, who part of them are here. And we're just really grateful. I think so what will happen after this, I'll write a proper report, which I'll share with you as well, and you can share with your team, just to highlight everything that you said, and to make sure, because now what happens after the UN75 dialogues are had, from all over the world. GA starts, I believe, on the 21st of September. This is what they'll be using to come up with ideas and to come up. So after this, they're going to form a committee, like an advisory board, that's going to take all these different ideas and come up with a clear plan on how they'll implement them. So in one way or another, you are all consultants. You can send me your check. I'll sort you out. But yeah, so that's what's supposed to happen, after we finish this particular discussion. For those of you who have organizations, I would really encourage you, if you have the voices, I'll go back to that. If you feel the voices that are not being heard, host such a conversation. Invite panels like this. Honestly, how I met most of you was through different connections. I follow, I'm not a stalker, but I follow your work. Could it be, be it on Instagram, on Twitter? I follow the different things you do. Some of you I've known personally, and I've, had the privilege of working with you, the likes of Simon, real mentors, like people who really guide you. So if I was able, with the little network I have, to reach all of you, imagine what you guys can do and the more people you can interact with. Personally, I think I've learned a lot, and I hope our panel has also learned quite a bit from this, and have a new perspective. So if you're able to, I'd really encourage you to host such a conversation. I think we'll keep having such UN75 dialogues all the way till next year, when they have the next GA to more or less report on what they'll actually be doing to make the next 25 years really, really count. So I don't take so much time, it's already 12:33. I can still see a few comments. Oh, you're most welcome. This is the first time moderator. So wait for me, Max. Should I put this in my CV? Yeah, career strategist, let me know. I put it now. Yeah, so it was such a pleasure to moderate and to host you. Again, thank you so much. This will be, sent to all the panelists as well as on our page. So if you want to watch it again, hear the brilliant ideas, feel free to do so. And please comment, give your ideas on what it is you feel, what it is you think we should have talked about, a bit more. And maybe we'll bring the same panel. We'll see. We'll talk about that. Finally, as we finish off, we'll be having now the second UN75 dialogues, which shall be a ladies only panel. That will be on the 26th of September. So if you'd like to be engaged in that as well, please make sure you register when the registration will be open. Marketing will start sometime next week. So unless there's anything else, I'd just like to give final word from all the panelists, and then we wrap up. Just 5-10 seconds if possible. We can start with Cynthia, because I'm filling my screen now. Sorry.
Sure. Thank you so much, Daniela. Thank you so much to all the participants and to the rest of the panelists. It was lovely to join you guys. I've learned so much more in your different spaces. Mine is very short. Just remember to dream big and to hope deep. Oh. Remember to dream big and to hope deeply.
Deeply. Nice. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Nimrod?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome.
We can hear you.
Awesome. So for me, it's just to say that even as young people, that we should be proactive and innovative in every kind and every sense of responsibility, and showing initiative and getting involved. That's how you get to create more value. even as a young professional.
Great, thank you so much. Bryan?
Yeah, just echoing Nimrod and Cynthia, it's been an amazing morning, a lovely conversation. So thank you so much for organizing this. Parting shot, just give to every young person, give yourself the permission to begin, to start that journey. Let's all be change makers because we can be change makers.
Thank you. Abigail?
Well, I am so glad to be part of this great panel. I mean, I've learned so much from you, and I feel like I've already built a network, and I hope this doesn't stop here. I hope we actually get to meet and do great things together. Well, I'll say my parting shot is no matter how little, just do it because it makes a difference. So yeah. Thank you.
Finally, Simon. I left, at least I took you last today. But yes.
Great. Yeah, so thank you all for having us as well. Really a wonderful conversation. My parting shot would be to do whatever you can and do it with all your heart because the world is counting on you and I to make the difference. Yeah.
I see what you did there, but yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for engaging with us. As I said, this will go on social media. I'd like to end it there for today. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. And yeah, let's do this again for sure. So thank you so much. And yes, we'll see you in the next UN75 battle. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
So, okay. Where's Chris?